Matthew 25. So we're continuing on our stewardship series here the last couple months. And as I've mentioned in numerous lessons up to this point, as good as they have been and as helpful as it has been, they're also been convicting in my life and things that I'm just not that great at all the time when it comes to stewarding. And it's hard it's not hard to study it. It's a little difficult to teach it because you kind of feel like, well, I'm a hypocrite up here telling you to do stuff that I struggle with as well. And today is no exception for that. So while these have been super helpful to me and I've changed some things about my perspective, if anything, on a lot of things, I don't like teaching it. I straight up just be honest with you. It's just like I don't like it. It's not fun. We just talk about other things that would be better. But these are things that are necessary. And things that God gives us as examples that he expects us to do. When it comes to how we steward just our life, we can kind of give ourselves a free pass a lot of times and give ourselves a lot of leeway, a lot of grace when it comes to how we steward our time, how we steward our health, how we steward our thoughts. These are things we've already talked about. And we give ourselves excuses on why we waste time, and we would not call it wasting time. We would give it another definition that's not as harsh to ourselves. We think about giving ourselves excuses on how we manage our thoughts or our worry or our stress levels. And again, we give ourselves leeway when it comes to those things so we don't feel so bad and are so harsh on ourselves. But if we're just honest, God has given us everything and he expects us to be stewards of it. And one day we will give an account of everything we do, of every moment that we have in our life, of every word that was said to our spouse, to our kids, all these things that we do, we will give an account of how we live our life. And so if we have the right perspective on our stewardship, it can quickly go from something that we kind of push off to the side to very high on the priority list, if we have the right perspective on it. So we're going to read a passage here in Matthew 25 that's probably fairly familiar with how a parable that Jesus gives about the talents and how these men or these people took care of the things that God gave them. And I grew up in church from the time that I can basically remember being in church all the time. And I've heard many sermons and many lessons on stewarding and handling your finances and your money. And we were going to talk about that briefly today. But as I studied it out, I'm not going to get very specific on tithing and giving and things of that nature. Hopefully you understand those are things that God expects from us. What I'm going to talk about today is kind of the way we view it and our perspective on it. So as I studied and read a lot, this was the thought that really kind of hit me the most. And so it's me that's up here talking, I'm just going to give you what hit me the most, and hopefully it'll be a help to you too as well. So we'll start here in Matthew 25, verse number 14, and we'll read down to verse number 30. The Bible says, "For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants and delivered unto them his goods. And unto one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to every man according to his several ability, and straightway took his journey. Then he that had received the 5 talents went and traded with the same, and made them other 5 talents. And likewise he that had received 2, he also gained other 2. But he that had received 1 went and digged it in the earth, and hid his Lord's money. After a long time the Lord of those servants cometh, and reckoneth with them. And so he that had received 5 talents came and brought other 5 talents, saying, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained beside them 5 talents more. His Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of the Lord. He also that had received 2 talents came and said, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 2 talents. Behold, I had gained 2 other talents beside them. His Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord. Then he which had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew thee, that thou art an hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering where thou hast not strawed. And I was afraid, and went and hid thy talent in the earth. And lo, there thou hast, that is thine. His Lord answered and said unto him, Thou wicked and slothful servant, thou knowest that I reap where I sowed not, and gatherest where I had not strawed. Thou oughtest therefore to have put my money to the exchangers, and then at my coming I should have received mine own with usury. Take therefore the talent from him, and give it unto him which hath 10 talents. For unto every one that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not shall be taken away even that which he hath. And cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So we are familiar probably to some degree or another about the parable, about how God has given us all things, right? God has given us gifts. He's blessed every single one of us to different levels, right? I mean, we're all blessed, though. There's not a one person in here that hasn't been blessed by the Lord with material things. And here with money, things of finances, things that you need to live, right? To pay your bills, to clothe your children, to eat, all the things that God gives us. And when we look at it this way, God has entrusted many gifts to our stewardship. You know, when you think of time and even health and our thoughts, a lot of those things are kind of intangible and hard to kind of measure. Right? You can't measure. You can, but it's a little more difficult to measure if you're wasting your time or stewarding your time right or not. Health, relationships, it's hard to measure those concretely, and often they're subjective. Right? That's your health and my health, and your time and my time. It's gonna differ in a lot of different ways. Finances, however, is pretty tangible. Right? Although it differs in the amounts that we all have and earn and that the Lord allows us to use, it's something, though, that physically passes through your hands, or at least physically swipes through with your hands, right? We aren't necessarily using cash as often anymore, but whether it's your bank account or your actual wallet or purse, these are things that objectively can be measured. Right, we can objectively measure the finances that we own, and even the materials, the resources that we have. It's a physical measurement that we all can look at and have numbers attached to it. So it's a little different than time or health and things of that nature. But as you know, if you've been in church any amount of time as well, it's a physical gauge of your heart. Right? We spend money and time also, but we spend money on things we like. Right? If you have a hobby or you've got a thing you do, you invest money into it. You invest money into your home. You invest money into things that are important to you in your day-to-day life. And it gauges our value on things. And so obviously what we're talking about here is God expects us to steward our income, our finances. He knows we have to live on this earth, right? That requires finances. Living in a home, getting around, everything requires money, and that requires resources and stuff. And God understands that. But what God also wants from us, just like with everything, is he wants us to steward it and spend it wisely, not just kind of waste it, not to squander. That's a word we used at the beginning of the lesson series, to squander it. And it's easy to squander money. It's easy to squander our resources. But in Matthew 6, God says, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And if you look at all the parables that Jesus gave personally, approximately 38 parables he told throughout the Gospels, 16 of them have to do with money or possessions. So close to half of every time he gave a parable, he was talking about your treasure, your resources, your actual money, things that you spend. So for us to faithfully steward our resources for the Lord, there's something we have to understand. And this is where I'm not going to get into all the specifics on how you spend your money and budgeting. Those are valuable, and you should go to the financial peace class to help with that. I'm going to more talk about a philosophy and the way our brain and our lifestyle understands what stewardship of our finances means. So we have to understand, in order to faithfully steward everything we have, money included, we have to understand that what is the source of everything we have. And again, we're here in our nice church clothes, and we all do understand that the source of everything we have is God. Right? No one here would be like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. God gives us everything. It's not a revelation just all of a sudden we had. Psalm 24:1, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. James 1:17, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above. We know these things. God is the benefactor to us. Everything we have Everything that we possess, everything we use belongs to him, and we have because of him. So God's the owner of everything, right? He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. God is the owner of everything within our possession, every material good in our life that is entrusted to us by him. And it's a philosophy, it's an understanding, it's a perspective on from the amount of paper that's in your wallet or purse, to the shoes and the clothes that you wear, to the coffee that we drank this morning, to the food you had for breakfast, to the gas you put in your car to get here, to the coat you had to wear because it's cold. Every material item that we possess on this earth is entrusted to us by him. And he expects us to steward everything. I think we've laid that groundwork leading up to this point too, that God expects us to steward all these things that he's given us. So we have to look beyond the distribution process to the source. So you have to look beyond even your job, right? It's like with my kids, if you go to the ATM and you just, you get some money out of the ATM, they're just like, get me some. Like, just free money out of this machine. You just push a couple buttons and it just gives you money, not understanding that there's a source, right, that money is coming from. And it's not never ending, right? It does hit. There is a bottom to it. There is a zero where it stops. But as a child, they don't understand that. They see the ATM and they see it as a distribution of money, not realizing the source. And we, if we're not careful, can have that mentality with our life. We look at our jobs, we look at the raises, we look at the work we do, we look at how we, all the items and the things that we like and that we collect or that we, store up, even our investments and our savings and all those things that we look at it as that's kind of like the top level, how we get everything where it goes. And we have to look beyond that to the fact that it all belongs to God, right? Our dependence is not in our financial prowess, but often, I'm guilty of this. When the bank account's a little bigger and the bills are paid, I'm way less stressed, right? When something comes up, a water heater or a car thing or something that depletes money you weren't expecting, the stress level goes up, right? When the bank account gets low, the stress goes up, the worry goes up. And I can even in my own self put my comfort level and even my mood into how big the bank account is at any given time. And if it gets low, I'm on edge. And that's me putting my trust in my comfort level in a bigger number and putting all my stock and my feelings and emotions and worries and all those things into how much money do I have? Because you need money to function. You need money to live. And if I'm putting all of those into it, it's a perspective of that's where my dependence is. My dependence is in the amount of money or the opportunities for success, to obtain money. And that's where my dependence is. However, that's if all the money dried up, if everything went away, if the economy actually collapsed into nothing. And I was listening to, and I do podcasts, I think I've mentioned that to you before. I was listening to a history podcast. They were talking about Germany after World War I and how Hitler kind of came into power and how the dollar to I can't remember the name, the mark, was just, it was bad right away, but by the time Hitler came to power, it was ridiculous. Like they would go in for a cup of coffee, but in the time that they ordered the coffee set for an hour, it could have gone up like 2,000 marks in like a half hour. Like it was wheelbarrows full of stuff to buy bread, right? It was worthless. And imagine if we were complaining about $5 for a dozen of eggs. What if this was $1,000 for a dozen eggs, right? What if and for us, we're like, well, we can't really comprehend that. We've never lived that way. We never even lived through the Depression where it got bad, right? None of us had to do that. So it's hard for us to fathom that. But imagine living in that time where money is worthless. Right, the collapse of the economy, and how would that strip away your confidence? How much fear would be involved in your life in that moment? I would gather probably all of us it'd be pretty stressful, pretty worrisome, and that's the thing in this world that has happened scores and scores, if not more, times to different groups of people in different times of this earth. So when we put our dependence on those things, especially as Americans, that things and stuff is where we put a lot of our stock of success to. But what if all that goes away? God is the one that our dependence should be upon, regardless of how much money we have. And when we look at our money as that God entrusted those things to our care, right? The job you have, the income you bring in, the investments that bring you interest, and the things that you're doing to build wealth, God has entrusted all those things to you. And all of us are different, just like the men in this story. They have different abilities of how they handle things. The guy that got one, the Lord knew that he was didn't have the talents to give 5 to, so he was given 1. Now, we all have different levels of prowess. We all have different understandings. We all have different trust levels in what God can do for us. I mean, it seems a little harsh, but there are different levels of trust that we all have in our spiritual growth. And where you are with the Lord today, right this moment, personally, we have different levels of where we're at, right? Some of you may have much greater faith than I have, and vice versa. So God entrusts those things to us to care for, to take care of, to enjoy, yes, but also to use and steward for him, right? We're managers of God's stuff because he's the owner, right? God is the owner of everything. We're just his managers, basically. So this is what really stuck with me. So if I my family owns a restaurant in Brookings. It's like a Culver's fast food type place. And my dad purchased it in 2000. So we've had it for 23 years now. We've managed this restaurant. And he's out of town. He's been gone all the whole month of January. He's a snowbird now, apparently. You know, you get older and you leave. So he's been sending me the temperatures in Florida. I blocked his texts. So I got tired of hearing it. I said, I have a weather app. You don't have to do this. But he's been gone, right? So my brother and I have kind of been just doing everything. And it's January for us. It's a little quieter because we do ice cream and stuff like that. But today, right, I've been doing all the stuff my dad's been doing. I've been doing all that, plus my normal stuff. Today, my brother and I are both off. Our restaurant still opens, and I have a manager there today, right? He hopefully, I haven't heard not, but hopefully he was there around 8 o'clock to get things started, right? And I, as the owner of the store, of the business, have entrusted him with running it today. So he's there. He's in charge of the tills, right? He knows the combination to the safe. He knows where all the money is. He gets the money out. He puts it in the till. And everything that comes in today, he's in charge of, right? Now, if he decided to take one of the tills and, go buy pizza for everybody, he could do that, right? I'm not there. He could do that. And I'd probably be okay with that. I'd probably be like, we should probably plan this ahead. But, okay, sure, we're doing something nice for everybody. Now, if he took money from the tills and went and bought himself, a new grill at the Carl's in the strip mall, well, okay, I think we need to have a little talk, right? Because that's not really what I'm entrusting him to do, right? And so he's there today, and he has free reign today to do what he needs to do and take care of things and make decisions. He does not have to text me or call me when things come up. I have entrusted him to make those choices, to make those calls, to make those decisions with what does belong to me, right? And I've allowed him to do that. Now, if we take that perspective, and we all understand that, and we're all like, yep, that makes sense. I'm on board with that. That's logical. Now put yourself in the position of the manager, and Zesto is your life, your whole lifetime, and God's like, this is up. You're entrusted with all these things. You can do whatever you want with it. God's not going to come and say, stop doing those things. He's allowed us pretty free reign in how we handle the things that God has given us. But now tomorrow when I come to work and he comes in, if he does do stuff like that, well, now not a confrontation, but we have to have a discussion, right? He will give an account of the things that he did today while he was at the job when I was not. And that is our life, right? There will be a day where you're going to have to give an account on all the Star Wars stuff you bought. I call myself out. That's fine. I like Star Wars. I got a lot of Star Wars stuff. And this is why I don't like teaching these lessons, because it's too true and it hits home and it's not fair. But that's the truth of the matter. God doesn't say don't buy fun things. God never tells us you can't do things with the things I give you that are enjoyable. But we are to be stewards of it. We are to use it wisely, right? So when that day comes, when the owner comes and the managers of the things he's allowed us to use, we have to give an account of all the things that we've done. But he takes a step further. We have to give account of the things that we said, of the thoughts that we've had, of the emotions we felt, of the lack of trust in him that we've had, right? I'm not going to be that harsh with Jeremy, my manager. I'm not going to worry about his emotions for the day, right? That's not my concern. But God gives us more, and he is concerned with all of those things. He is concerned with your emotions. He's concerned with how you treat people. He's concerned with the thoughts you have and the words that you say. And we have to give account to all those things. So the things that we have entrusted to us, again, not given, right? Jeremy, he's the manager. He doesn't own the store now, right? He's there today. He's in charge, but it doesn't belong to him. His name is, he doesn't own it, right? It's not his. It's still mine. So when God gives us the things we have, I don't own this suit. I don't own these shoes. I don't own that car. I don't own my house. I use it. I steward it. God has allowed me to use his stuff. This is God's car. It's God's house. Right? They're God's kids. They're not mine. They don't belong to me. I'm not the owner. I'm the manager. I'm the steward of those things. So I expect my manager today to steward things for my benefit. Right? I expect him to run the store for my benefit. Now, I will help him. If it benefits me, it benefits him. But I expect him to run the store and manage it and operate it, the employees, the money, the product. I expect him to run it in a way that benefits me. And that's how God looks at us and the things that he gives us. He expects us to manage and steward the things he's given us to benefit him. Not just our retirement, right? Not just our bank account. Not just the things that are in our garage or in our basement, or wherever we keep our valuable stuff. God expects us to steward the things he gives us for his benefit. It's our responsibility, it's our job as the managers, right, to find out what the owner wants to do with his assets. Like, it's my manager, Jeremy, it's his responsibility to find out what, as the owner, I want to happen, and then to fulfill that, and make that happen. It's our responsibility as managers of God's stuff, of his assets, to find out what he wants us to do with his assets and then carry that out. And that's why tithing is vital. That's why faith promise is necessary. That's why a building fund is necessary. That's why all the things that we have, and you go, oh, the preacher's talking about giving again. The pastor's wanting more money. We got to have money for this. That attitude is that it's my stuff and you want my stuff. That's when we get upset by God wanting us to give things or give more. It's us going, these are my things and God wants more of my stuff. So if Jeremy was like, well, you want more sales, and that's, this is my money and I'm doing the best I can. I can't give you more sales. I can't give you better payroll management. I can't give you these more time. Like, no, it's not yours. You just do what I say, right? I'm paying you to do something, and your job as a manager is to find out what the owner wants and fulfill it. Good managers do that. Successful managers do that, right? They do what the owner wants. That's our role as stewards of God's things, is to view them as his things, and our job is to manage them to his benefit. So I have 5 things quickly for those that do manage God's things faithfully, and they manage his resources and they faithfully multiply. Even like in our story, right? They didn't need to just don't come in and with the same thing you're given, but you grow it for his benefit. So there are a few things that we can do that will help us with that. So the very first thing is work diligently. Pretty basic, but and this is one thing I've tried to teach my kids. Carter, he's been working, and even though Madison doesn't know, she's 13, she starts work this summer. I don't think she's really excited about it, but it's happening. So the thing I always teach my kids is you work hard, right? I don't care if you're the boss's kid or not. And I tell my managers, don't treat them like the boss's kid, treat them like everybody. But I expect them to be the hardest worker at the place, right? I expect Carter to be the best, even when I'm not there. And so I'm hard on him. And so when he started working nights, which wasn't on the same shift as me, one of the managers was like, felt bad about giving Carter a hard time. And my brother was there. He's like, you can't give him a more hard time than his dad does. So, if he needs to be told, then tell them. But working diligently, God blesses hard work, right? He explains that in his word. Diligence and working hard. It's not a gift or a talent that we have, a skill. Well, that person is just diligent. It's a character trait, right? Being diligent and working hard is a character trait. It's a choice that we make to be and to work a certain way. So regardless of your skill financially, with your knowledge or your wisdom or the ability to know what to invest in and what all the terms, regardless of that, you can work hard. You can develop diligence. So one of the very first habits that people that manage resources and faithfully do what God wants them to do is work diligently. Secondly, and this is a mental one, transfer ownership, right? We're prone to forget that everything comes from God. And we just do. When we want the overtime, when we're saving up for something, we forget that it comes from God. We have to make a conscious choice to acknowledge that God as the owner and us as the manager of his things, of all the material possessions that we have, all the things that, again, are your collections or just the clothes in your closet, they do not belong to us. They aren't ours. They're his. And we have to mentally make that choice, because when we do that, it helps us to be good stewards, because we hold it much looser because it doesn't belong to us. But if we retain the ownership of all the things we have, we tend to close our fists a little harder because it's ours, and I have to retain it, and I have to protect it. Turn it over to God, because it's already his anyways, and then enlist yourself as his steward. So give up the ownership of the things you have, of everything. I mean, we're talking material possessions, but this can apply to a lot of things. Give up the ownership you have, give it over to him. Transfer the ownership. Thirdly, steward efficiently. Contentment and discernment, right? We are to be content with the things that we have, but we all also are expected to be wise and discerning with the things that we have. We should be content, but we should be wise. That's why budgeting is important, right? That's why you don't just willy-nilly, I got money, I'm just going to you got to be smart with it. God expects you to be wise with the things that he gives you. So using God's money wisely, right? That's why budgeting is important. That's why you should have a plan for all these things, because you're using and stewarding his things wisely, and you're being efficient with those things, right? Man, there's so many examples when you have kids that just give you. So Gemma had a birthday party. She turned 7 Friday, and we were at Pizza Ranch. And so my he's 16, he'll be 17 here in a few weeks. 17-year-old son comes in with one of the drink glasses and just filled with ice cream to the top, right? Just filled all the way up, which, okay, you could give some props to the little 2-ounce cup they give right by the ice cream. That's not enough ice cream. Come on, let's be honest. But he went and got a giant, 16-ounce cup and filled it all the way to the top, after having had multiple plates of other food. So you see where I'm going, parents. He's not going to eat all that. He's not. And I'm like, dude, why? You don't need to do that. That's unnecessary. You're not going to eat it all. It's free, was his response. It's free. I was like, no, I paid for this. He's like, he goes, you already paid for it, so everything now is free. I was like, okay. So that while that is true, technically it is true. It's not costing him more regardless of how much ice cream he gets. I was like, the problem is you've taken something that you're not going to use. You're going to throw it away. I see the stuff we throw away, and it's a part of the business, but it's literally putting money in the trash can. And they're there to make money, and their business model is what it is. But for us, for him on a personal level, I want him to learn not to waste stuff just because he can, right? Because that brings up a group of people that just, if it doesn't cost me anything, who cares what happens to it? And that's our natural tendency. It's not like, well, I'm a parent, I would never. Yes, I do. I do that all the time. We may not see it as clearly in ourselves, but we do that. If it's not costing me anything, whatever. So it's not my car, I can set it on fire. It's not my building, I can break the window, right? It doesn't cost me anything, especially if I don't get caught, it costs me nothing. And that's why we have the problems. Some of the problems we have is because there's no ownership. So for him, although it didn't cost him anything, it's not efficient in stewarding what God has allowed us to be steward of. It's just wasting. It's leaving the faucet on at home. because he's not going to pay the bill on the water bill, but it does cost somebody something, and we, as God's stewards, should be aware that it costs somebody something, and we should be aware of those things. So to be content, yes, but to steward efficiently. 2, here I'll do it quickly. Save regularly. Okay, so we could say, well, saving and hoarding money, we're supposed to spend it, we're supposed to give it. But Proverbs tells us, a gracious woman retaineth honor, and strong man retaineth riches. There's nothing wrong with saving money, right? Saving money is wise. It's good, it's wise to retain or save, as long as you remember your savings also belong to the Lord. So your nest egg that you're putting away for the future, or this thing that you're saving up for whatever it may be, or you just want to have it, it still is God's, even though it's in a different account. It still belongs to the Lord. So maintain your savings with an open hand, right? Ready to use the blessing God has given you in your savings account to honor him in whatever way it needs to be, right? So if that's giving it away to somebody else, but you willing to use it when you don't want to, at least this way I am. When I have a savings account, I pretend like it doesn't exist, right? It's not part of the equation. It's out there. We don't acknowledge it, until we need it. But God says, retain those riches, but be willing to use them for him. It still belongs to him. And then lastly, give generously. We talked at the beginning, giving and finances are kind of a sign of our heart. Giving is a reflection of our love for him and our evidence of our ownership. When we understand our ownership level and who we love, giving is easy, right? Giving is easy when it's not yours. It belongs to him. And we love him and love the things he loves. It's easy to give. George Mueller said, "Let us walk as stewards and not act as owners, keeping for ourselves the means with which the Lord has entrusted us. He has not blessed us that we may gratify our own carnal mind, but for the sake of using our money and things in his service to his praise." And that's the whole thought process and perspective that, as I've studied, that God just kind of went upside my face and says, you're viewing your things askew. You're viewing it as if it's yours. And that's when it's ours, we want to hold it. And that's when things slip through our fingers. When we hold it tighter, things slip through our fingers. And so God says, hold it loosely. Understand it belongs to me. And you're expected to steward it and manage my stuff. So when we view our things as though they're not our things, it's way easier for us to steward his money, to steward his things. Regardless of how much or how little we have, it's way easier for us to steward it properly when we understand it doesn't belong to us. So that's the thought process I want to bring to you. I'll end there.